Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Mrinmoy Pramanik. I teach comparative Indian language and literature at the University of Calcutta. Today we'll discuss on translation studies, and the module is on the Mahabharata and the Ramayana in translation. This module, the content of this module is written by Nisha Kutti. Now let us begin our discussion. The origin of epic as a genre in literature can be traced back to the themes of court epics written in Sanskrit. Traditionally, these court epics were known as kavyas. These poems of kavyas were composed by men of great learning and wisdom with a cultivated taste. Kavyas were thus meant for an accomplished audience who could appreciate poetic descriptions of grandeur within these poems. Historically, epics as a genre in India did not appear abruptly, but were a result of an evolution which derived its origin from two great works of poetry, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Having said this, one can note a natural change from sacred to secular poetry through the course of time in India. The Ramayana is not considered to be a text that merely traces the life of a king turned godhead, but also a framework of philosophical and ethical elements that are brought forth through idealistic characters and teachings of wise Hindu sages. Contrary to this, the Mahabharata, the other epic in question, traces the rise and fall of the Kaurava dynasty, known to be the longest poem ever written in the history of mankind. The Mahabharata consists of about 2 lakhs individual verses along with long prose passages written by sage Vyasa with the aid of Lord Ganesha. The Mahabharata is touted to be over 1.8 million words long and about 10 times the length of Greek epics, the Iliad and the Odyssey. Though both texts at their very core attempt to emphasize on the philosophical aspects, the Mahabharata can be read as a story. Today, after centuries, both texts have been translated into innumerable languages from various parts of the world. In India alone, the Ramayana and the Mahabharata are the earliest known texts to have undergone translation. What is interesting to see is through the course of each of this translation, there is a move away from certain core ideas relevant to the original text. The Ramayana and its various translation. The Ramayana by Valmiki. The Ramayana is considered as the Adi Kavya or the prime poem in India. It paved way to various new forms of poetry that emerged through several centuries of poetic experimentation. According to the Hindu chronology of ages, the text belongs to the Treta Yuga, second of the 4 yugas or ages. The Ramayana is believed to be written by sage Valmiki and it traces the life of Rama, the valorous prince of Koshala kingdom, often considered to be one of the largest ancient epic till date. The original version of the Ramayana, believed to be written by sage Valmiki, consists of 24,000 verses through the course of 7 kandas and about 500 sargas. The seeds of the court epics were already there in the Ramayana, and one can even go back to some of the poems in the Rig Veda, which contains examples of heightening of style and brilliant metaphors as well as imageries of erotic suggestions, Shishir Kumar Das commented. Valmiki's Ramayana had been divided into 7 chapters or kandas as mentioned before. These were Valakanda, Ayodhya-kanda, Aranya-kanda, Kishkindha-kanda, Sundara-kanda, Yuddha-kanda and Uttara-kanda. The intriguing details to note as one reads the Ramayana, first Valmiki's rendition in Sanskrit and then the various translations of the same, is the changing face of Rama, the protagonist. According to Valmiki, who was Rama? Rama was the ideal son, the ideal brother, the ideal husband, and more importantly, the ideal king. He stood for all that was righteous in the universe. His dutiful nature earned him the title of Purushottam, the ideal man. Valmiki's poetry sang praises of Rama's valorous nature. This legendary epic is still quoted by people around the world for the instances of exemplary virtues and philosophical teachings that are imparted through Valmiki's words. The accepted theory is that the story of Rama had been orally transmitted through generations until Valmiki wrote it down. This led to what can be termed as a literary revolution in producing the first ornate poem of India, or the Adi Kavya. The most important detail to note in Valmiki's portrayal of Rama is that his character is not that of a god. He is a man who has qualities of a god-man but lives within the limitations of his human life. Due to the lack of evidence surrounding the origin and evolution of Valmiki's narrative, scholars argue that references made regarding Rama's divinity and possible incarnation leading to the death of Ravana in the first Balakanda and last Uttarakanda. Books of Valmiki's Ramayana could be later additions to the work. In these portions, Rama is described as a god with a mission to vanquish the forces of evil from the universe. Contrary to this, the major portions of Valmiki's Ramayana addresses Rama as an ideal man with virtues that of a suprahuman being. However, Valmiki's Rama underwent a sea change along with certain events as described by him in the translations of the epic, which began appearing a few centuries later. One of the most intriguing and widely read translations of the Ramayana is Tamil poet Kamban's Ramavataram or Kamba Ramayana. Not only is Kamban's writing starkly different from that of Valmiki's, but his Rama is not just a mere mortal but a completely evolved godhead. Kamban's Ramayana or Ramavataram by Kamban, written in the 12th century, the Tamil poet Kamban's narration of Ramavataram or Rama's avatar differs in its spiritual concepts and certain specific incidents of the storyline that are completely different from that of the original Sanskrit text. While Valmiki's Ramayana had been divided into 7 kandas, Kamban's Ramayana, Ramavataram, had been divided into 6 kandams: Balakandam, Adhyathma, Aranyakandam, Kishkindha-kandam, Sundara-kandam and Yuddha-kandam. Apart from the difference in the number of kandas between the two versions, Kamban's portrayal of Rama as a god became the major point of difference and the initialization of honoring Rama as a godhead in India. A.K. Ramanujan, in his canonical essay 300 Ramayanas, points out this vital factor of difference. Through Kamban's poem, Rama is a Tamil hero, a generous giver and a ruthless destroyer of foes, and the Bhakti vision makes the release of Ahalya from her rock-bound scene in a paradigm of Rama's incarnatory mission to release all souls from world-bound misery. Kamban's poetry, which induces the use of poetic measures like Viruttam and Santam in several verses, helps in setting the emotion and the right mood for storytelling. Therefore, all passages in his work are dense with theological images and religious sentiments. Now, let us talk about Adhyathma Ramayana by Ezhuthachan. Written in the early 17th century, Adhyathma Ramayana is the first Malayalam translation of Valmiki's Ramayana, originally titled as Adhyathma Ramayanam Kilipattu. This adaptation of the epic focuses solely on the spiritual aspect of the storyline. Unlike Valmiki's Rama, Ezhuthachan's Rama is a figure which inspires devotion. He is a godhead. Ezhuthachan, who has often been given the title of the father of Malayalam literature, had taken the inspiration to write his spiritual adaptation of the Ramayana from the Brahmananda Purana. As seen in case of Kamban's writing, Ezhuthachan's Rama is a creation of bhakti. Here the narration unfolds through a conversation between Lord Shiva and Parvati. Ezhuthachan's Ramayana has the same number of 6 kandas as seen in case of Kamban. The major difference between Ezhuthachan's adaptation and Valmiki's original is the introduction of Rama as four-handed avatar of Mahavishnu at his very birth, thus admitting to his divine self at the very beginning of the epic. Another unique factor in Ezhuthachan's storyline is the introduction of Maya Sita or the Shadow Sita. Unlike the original, Rama, who is a godhead here, informs the real Sita about her abduction by Ravana before he comes to take her away. To protect her from being abducted, Rama asks Agni Mata to consume her to safety. In Ezhuthachan's adaptation, Maya Sita was introduced right after the real Sita disappears into a fire right before Ravana arrives and abducts Maya Sita instead. Sita's eventual Agni Pariksha is shown as a necessity to replace Maya Sita, who is killed by Ravana's son Indrajit. Therefore, Ezhuthachan's Adhyathma Ramayana is a valorization of Rama's divine powers. It is still widely read in Malayali households in Ramayana Masam, or a month devoted to reading the Adhyathma Ramayana. His work inspired poet Tulsidas to create his own Awadhi adaptation of the epic Ramcharitmanasa, Ramayana in Norwegian. The 3 versions of the epic that have been discussed above have their origin within the realm of Indian literature. Apart from these translations, several other authors have translated the Ramayana, and 2 of the most popular adaptations are in Awadhi by Bhakti poet Tulsidas in his Ramcharitmanas, in Bengali by poet Kritibasha in his Kritibasha Ramayana. Other than these adaptations in Indian languages, the Ramayana is a canonical text in several other parts of the world like Indonesia, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Thailand, Cambodia, Burma, and Philippines. One of the most intriguing adaptations of Valmiki's works is the Norwegian Ramayana, which has been the topic of extensive discussion in Anne Marie Levy's essay, The Ramayana in Norwegian. The Norwegian adaptation of 1924, Acharya's adaptation and eventual Garborg's translation of the same could not leave behind the religious standards in Valmiki's original. However, the Norwegian Ramayana is a story set amidst the introduction of various races that are extremely different from one another. Rama, an Aryan hero, and Ravana, who is introduced as the aboriginal chief from Lanka, are the main characters of this story. The Norwegian adaptation of 1990. The 1990 adaptation of the Ramayana in Norwegian was by a contemporary poet named Ezhuthachan. He calls the Indian epic a tale of trust and treason, courage and romantic love, with its origin in India, the mother of all fairy tales. His adaptation of the Ramayana is written in the form of a play. Bringsword play is for children and for those grown-ups who have the ability to open their minds unto marveling at the wonders of the literary world. The Mahabharata and its translations. The Mahabharata by Vedavyas. The Mahabharata is the other Indian epic known for its vast storyline and unique narrative technique, believed to be written by the sage Vedavyas between the 8th to 9th century BC. The Mahabharata traces the epic narrative of the Kurukshetra war fought between the Kauravas and Pandavas of the Kuru dynasty, who fought over the Hastinapur throne. The Mahabharata is believed to be the longest yet epic poem in the world, with over 2 lakhs individual verses. The storyline, as seen in case of other epics like the Ramayana or the Greek epics, the Iliad and Odyssey by Homer, elements of fantasy is interwoven with that of reality. The main characters of the epic are the Pandavas, who are 5 brothers: Yudhishthir, Bhima, Arjun, Nakula, and Sahadeva. and the 100 Kaurava brothers. While the narration begins many years before the birth of the Pandavas and Kauravas, the story slowly unfolds to describe why there is growing animosity amongst them in spite of the two being paternal cousins. This is the first time Indian literary history gets introduced to essentially grey characters that are extremely human. All characters have a good and bad side to themselves. This had been a missing element in the Ramayana, which was far more spiritual as a text. Originally written Sanskrit, the Mahabharata employs the narrative of a story within a story, though the authorship of the epic is attributed to sage Vedavyasa. The epic itself believed to be written by Lord Ganesha. Lord Ganesha agreed to note down words narrated by Vedavyas only if he promised to never pause his recitation. Vyas in turn agreed on the condition that Lord Ganesha understands every word Vyasa utters before writing it down, thus buying himself some time to pause his recitation. The title of the epic is derived from the idea that the story follows the lives of the descendants of Bharata, the noble king after whom the country came into the named after. Unlike the Ramayana, the Mahabharata lacks a clear structure, though there is a clear chapter division as seen in case of the Ramayana. The storyline lacks the coherence that the former possessed. Vyasa's Mahabharata can be divided into 18 parvas or divisions like Adi Parva, Shabha Parva, Vana Parva, Virata Parva, Uddaga Parva, Bhishma Parva, Drona Parva, Karna Parva, Shalla Parva, Shoptika Parva, Sri Parva, Shanti Parva, Anushasana Parva, and Vashyamedhika Parva, Maushala Parva, Mahaprasthanika Parva, and Shargarahana Parva. Apart from these 18 parvas, a short parva was added to the text which elaborates on events surrounding Lord Krishna, which had not been described through the course of the epic. This parva was called the Harivamsha Parva, though essentially a much later addition. This parva was added after Jaina versions of the Mahabharata came to be. It is towards the end of Bhishma Parva when the famous Bhagavad Gita is narrated by Sri Krishna to the Pandava prince Arjun. Often due to its volume and significance, the Bhagavad Gita is considered to be a separate book existent within the epic. The Bhagavad Gita is regarded as one of the most sacred texts in Hinduism. Not only does it serve to differentiate between the right and the wrong, but the philosophical and spiritual teaching incorporated through Krishna's wise words to atone Arjun. The female characters within the epic employ a strong role than that of the Ramayana in many ways. While Rama's ideal side was well described through the course of the epic, the Mahabharata is a story of revenge and bloodshed. Draupadi, a princess herself, was forced to marry all 5 of the Pandava brothers, and her undaunted spirit has provided inspiration to several independent novels in India. Vedavyasa's original version of the Mahabharata is often considered to be a historical text. There are conflicting deadlines attributed to Vyasa's text, but due to the existence of Kurukshetra, now in modern day Haryana, North India, and the various legends associated with the Kuru dynasty, the Mahabharata is often considered to be the first historical Indian text. Mahabharata by Sarala Das. Sarala Das was a prominent Oriya poet from the state of Orissa who was best known for his translation of the Mahabharata into his native language, Oriya. Written in the 15th century and first of its kind in the Oriya language, Sarala Das's translation of the epic is known for its various deviations from the original storyline and the innumerable stories which Das himself wrote and incorporated into the translated version. Like Vyasa's original, Sarala Dasa's Mahabharata has been divided into 18 parvas as well, though named slightly different. Adi Parva, Shabha Parva, Bana Parva, Virata Parva, Udaya Parva, Bhishma Parva, Drona Parva, Kanna Parva, Slaya Parva, Surtika Parva, Stri Parva, Shanti Parva, Anushasanika Parva, Ashrambashika Parva, Mahaprasthanika Parva, and Vashwamedha Parva, Maushala Parva, and the last Shargarahan Parva. Several parts of Sarala Dasha's adaptation deviates from Vyasa's original. Generally, Dasha's adaptation rejects the idea of war being the best solution to resolve the animosity between the Pandavas and the Kauravas. His words often reflect the need to reject the hatred and vengeance while are evident in the original epic. Several details from the storyline are also changed in the Oriya translation of the text. Mahabharata by Kavi Sanjay. Dinesh Chandra Sen, in his work Bangabhasha o Sahitya, spoke about how the first person to commission the translation of the Mahabharata in Bengali was a 11th century Muslim ruler named Sultan Nusrat Khan urf Nasir Khan. This first translation was supposedly called Bharata Panchali. Since almost no traces of that text can be found anymore, the first complete translation of the Mahabharata in Bengali verse is attributed to poet Kavi Sanjay, written in the beginning of the 15th century. Sanjay's version follows the Vidya-mitra in narration, though there is a conflict regarding when Sanjay actually composed his version of the epic. Some scholars, having studied his narrative technique, place his adaptation somewhere around the 17th century as well. 20th and 21st century works inspired by the Mahabharata. All of us know that Ramayana and Mahabharata only not being rendered or translated as the regional Ramayana or Mahabharata or the Ramayana and Mahabharata in Indian languages, but there are immense number of literature which have been created in modern India based on the themes and stories from the Ramayana and the Mahabharata. So let us concentrate on the 20th and 21st century rendering of the Ramayana Mahabharata in different modern forms like novel, short stories, poems, play, etc. Several novels of the 20th and 21st century drew inspiration from the Mahabharata. One such novel was Chitra Banerjee's The Palace of Illusions, which showcased Draupadi as the protagonist and narrator of the novel. It is through Draupadi's eyes that Banerjee re-narrates the entire Mahabharata, thus providing a female perspective to an epic which was extremely male-centric in its origin. Several plays also found their inspiration from innumerable characters from the epic. The Sanskrit playwright Bhasa composed two plays on episodes from the Mahabharata. The first play, Uruvangam, was based on the fight between Duryodhana and Bhima over Draupadi's dishonor. The second play, Madhyam Vyayaga, the middle one, was based on Bhima and his son Ghatatkacha. Apart from this, Girish Karnad's debut play Yajati is based on the character of King Yajati from the Mahabharata. Though Vyasa's rendition is not the 20th or 21st century rendering, but Vyasa's translation also has immense significance in later creation of modern Indian literature. So we just mention it in this portion. To conclude, therefore, we see how the same story has been told and retold over centuries in different languages and through the power of translation. Each version of the same story emerges as a unique one. Though there are arguments about the idea of authenticity associated with the field of translation in literature, each of these adaptations of the two Indian epics are original to their own regional space. What is interesting to note is the socio-cultural elements as well as changes in religious sentiments which slowly creep into each of these translations, which are spaced apart in terms of geography and time. Now, though the core idea of the epics remains constant, each translator brings in a unique understanding of the original text into the adaptation. This is what makes translation studies an intriguing area of literary study, as it is constantly evolving and incorporating more techniques through the course of time. Thank you.